I cheated under Mom's pressure, then lost everything. I whispered his name in the dark, my heart racing with a thrill I hadn't felt in years, but it wasn't my husband's name. If this cheating wife story shakes you, hit that like button, share your thoughts, and subscribe to Viora for more tales that unravel the soul. My name is Caroline Maddox, and I used to believe love was enough. Bryce Turner, my husband, was my rock-steady warm with a smile that could melt my doubts. We lived in a cozy bungalow in Burlington, Vermont, surrounded by maple trees and lake breezes. Bryce ran a small wealth management firm, his days filled with clients and spreadsheets, while I taught yoga at a local studio. My class is a haven of calm. 4 years of marriage, no kids yet, but we talked about it, dreaming of a future with tiny footsteps. I wasn't perfect. My temper flared when Bryce worked late, and I sometimes felt lost in his ambition. But I loved him fiercely, or so I thought. This is my cheating wife story, and it's not what you expect. It started with my mother, Diane Maddox, a force of nature with a failing heart and an iron will. Diane's health had been fragile since my teens, her cardiomyopathy a ticking clock. I need a grandchild. Caroline, she'd say, her voice sharp over endless phone calls. Before I'm gone. I wasn't ready, Bryce, and I wanted to travel to build our careers, but her words burrowed into me, guilt gnawing at my resolve. Diane didn't just ask. She demanded, comparing Bryce to better men who'd give her a legacy. He's too focused on money. She'd sneer, find someone who values family. Her pressure was a vice squeezing my dreams until they cracked. The first twist came at a family dinner. Diane cornered me in her kitchen, her eyes blazing. If Bryce won't give me a grandkid, leave him, you're wasting time. I laughed it off, but her words lingered, a seed of doubt. That night I met Blake Morrison, a guest at Diane's book club, invited for reasons I didn't yet grasp. Blake was charming, mid-30s, a real estate broker with a warm laugh and eyes that seemed to see through me. Your mom's intense, he said, handing me a glass of wine. We talked for hours, his attention a balm to Diane's barbs. I didn't flirt, not then, but I felt a spark dangerous and alive. The spark grew. Diane pushed Blake into my orbit, arranging chance meetings at her house, her church, even my yoga studio. He's successful, family-oriented, she'd say, her tone pointed. Blake was attentive, texting me about my classes, dropping by with coffee. I told myself it was innocent, but my replies grew longer, my heart fluttering when his name lit up my phone. Bryce noticed my distance, his brow furrowing one evening as I typed a message. "Everything okay, Caro?" He asked, his voice soft. I nodded, guilt twisting my gut. "Just mum stuff. A lie small but sharp, the first of many." The second twist was my surrender. Diane's health worsened, her hospital visits more frequent. "I don't have long," she whispered during one call. Her voice breaking. "Blake would make a great father." Her words broke me. I was drowning in her expectations. My love for Bryce warring with my fear of losing her. One night, after a fight with Bryce over his late hours, I met Blake at a bar. "You deserve to feel free," he said, his hand brushing mine. The wine, the music, his gaze, it pulled me under. We kissed, a reckless rush that drowned my guilt. That night I crossed a line, my body tangled with his in a hotel room, the weight of my choice sinking in as dawn broke. I didn't stop. Blake became my escape. Our meetings, a secret dance, coffee shops, his car stolen hours when Bryce was with clients. I'd read cheating stories on Reddit, judging the betrayers, but now I was one lying to Bryce with practiced ease, yoga retreat. I'd say, my heart pounding as I drove to Blake's apartment. Diane knew, her sly smiles confirming it. "You're doing the right thing," she'd say, her hand patting mine. I told myself I was pleasing her, saving her, but each lie carved a piece of me away. Bryce's trust, his quiet "I love you" each night, became a mirror to my shame. The third twist was Bryce's suspicion. I found a tracker app on my phone buried in the settings installed after a security update Bryce had mentioned. My blood ran cold. Had he seen my texts, my late-night drives? I confronted him, deflecting. "Why are you spying on me?" I snapped, my voice sharp. He frowned. "Hurt? I'm not Caro, I just worry." His honesty stung, but I doubled down, deleting texts, meeting Blake in cash-only cafes. The camera in our living room, disguised as a smart speaker, was my next clue. Bryce's tech upgrade felt too convenient. I disabled it, my hands shaking, but the damage was done. He was watching. The fourth twist was my unraveling. Diane's heart condition worsened her demands relentless. Get pregnant, she urged, her voice a whip. Blake's ready, I wasn't, but guilt and fear drove me. I stopped my birth control, telling Blake it was for us. He hesitated, his charm flickering. This is fast. Caroline, he said, pulling back. I panicked, clinging to him, my mother's voice in my head. One night I missed a yoga class, meeting Blake instead, and came home to Bryce's quiet stare. Where were you? He asked, his voice low. With a client, I lied, my throat tight. His eyes held mine, searching, and I saw something break. He knew. Bryce's stare lingered, a quiet accusation in the dim light of our Burlington kitchen, as my lie about a client hung between us like smoke. The autumn rain battered the windows, mirroring the chaos in my chest. I'd disabled the living room camera, erased my text to Blake, but Bryce's suspicion was a tide pulling me under. My mother Diane's voice haunted me. Get pregnant, Caroline, her hospital bed, a shadow over every choice. I turned to the sink, scrubbing dishes to hide my trembling hands. But Bryce's silence screamed louder than words. I was sinking in my cheating, and the shore was gone. The next day I dove deeper into deception. I met Blake at a secluded cafe in Winooski, paying cash to dodge any trace. Bryce knows something, I whispered, my latte cooling untouched Blake's eyes. Once warm were sharp, his broker's charm fraying. You said he was blind to it, he hissed, glancing at the door like a hunted man. If he's digging, we're exposed. My heart raced. Exposed, I grabbed his hand, desperation clawing at me. I'll fix it, Blake. Don't leave me. He sighed, his touch reluctant, but he nodded. Handle him, Caroline. His words chilled me a crack in the fantasy I'd clung to. Diane's call came as I drove back, her voice weak but relentless. Blake's your future, don't let Bryce drag you down. Her demands were chains, and I was too weak to break them. The first twist struck like lightning. That evening I found a note slipped into my yoga bag at the studio. I know about Blake, stop, or Bryce gets proof. The sharp black ink felt like a blade. My breath caught. Who knew a student? A neighbour. I scanned my class, their downward dogs and serene smiles now menacing. I showed Blake the note at his apartment, expecting his arms to steady me, but his face hardened. This is bad, Caroline, he said, pacing. Someone's tailing us. We need to lay low. Lay low. Panic surged. Without Blake, I'd be alone with Diane's guilt. My lies, my crumbling marriage. I begged him to stay. Tears spilling, I need you, I choked. He kissed me, but it was cold, mechanical. His eyes already elsewhere, I didn't see it then. But Blake was slipping through my fingers. I tightened my grip on the lie. At home, I played the perfect wife, cooking Bryce's favourite lasagna, laughing at his stories, anything to dull his edge. But he was different, his gaze lingering too long, his phone buzzing with messages he didn't share. You've been distracted, Caro, he said one night, his hand brushing mine, his voice soft but probing. Something up. My throat tightened. I forced a smile. Just Mum's health. Another lie, bitter as ash. I'd found a second tracker app on my phone, hidden in a system folder installed after Bryce's tech update. He was closing in a hunter I couldn't outrun. Diane's next hospital visit pushed me further into the dark. I'm running out of time. She rasped, her eyes boring into me. Blake's ready to be a father is Bryce. Her words were a whip lashing me toward a choice I wasn't ready to make. The second twist was my own recklessness. Diane's pressure, her heart monitor's beep, a countdown, drove me to madness. I stopped my birth control, telling Blake it was for us. My mother's voice drowning out reason we could start fresh. I said, my hands on his chest in a motel room, the neon sign flickering outside. Blake pulled back, his charm cracking. A kid, Caroline, that's not the plan. His rejection stung, but I pressed harder, desperate to bind him to me to satisfy Diane's dying wish. It's what I need, I pleaded. He relented, but his touch was distant, his eyes avoiding mine. Our meetings grew fevered, stolen in his car, a friend's cabin, anywhere we could hide. I skipped yoga classes. My students' whispers growing Caroline's flaky. Caroline's changed, my reputation frayed, but I didn't care, I was chasing a ghost. The third twist was the note's origin. Another appeared taped to my car's windshield, Blake's playing You End It, or Bryce Sees Everything. Rain blurred the ink, but the words seared into me. I confronted Blake, shoving the note in his face. Who's doing this? I demanded, his jaw clenched. Probably Hannah, he muttered. Hannah, his ex, the quiet artist from Diane's book club. She's obsessed jealous, he said, but his voice wavered. Doubt crept in. Was Blake lying? I tracked Hannah to her gallery, my nerves raw. Her paintings lined the walls, dark and chaotic like my mind. Leave Blake alone, she said, her eyes cold. He's not yours, and I'm not the only one watching. She turned away, refusing to elaborate, but her warning echoed Diane's demands, a cacophony of control. Was Hannah protecting me or threatening me? I spiraled further. I hacked Bryce's email, my fingers trembling as I guessed his password, our anniversary, a cruel irony. He'd hired a private investigator, Emma Klein, whose reports detailed my late-night absences and meetings with an unknown male. Photos attached me and Blake at the cafe, his hand on mine. My breath hitched. Bryce had proof timestamps, maybe even motel receipts. I deleted the emails, praying he hadn't seen them, but the living room camera was back online. Its lens, a silent accuser. I unplugged it, my hands shaking, but Bryce's car lingered outside our house at odd hours, its headlights cutting through the fog. I told Diane, hoping for guidance, but she scoffed. You're pathetic, Caroline Blakes, you're shot, don't blow it. Her disdain was a knife twisting deeper. The fourth twist was Blake's betrayal. Alone in his apartment, searching for his phone to check his texts, I found a hidden burner in his desk drawer. My hands shook as I unlocked it, text to Hannah Caroline's desperate perfect mark to a contact labelled T. She's in deep push. The real estate deal, real estate. My stomach lurched. Photos showed Blake with other women, their faces blurred, but their roles clear pawns like me. He wasn't just cheating. He was using my desperation, my mother's pressure to rope me into a scheme. A folder on the phone listed properties, including a fake listing for our house forged with my name. Blake wasn't my savior, he was a predator and I was his prey. I copied the data to a USB, my heart-pounding rain lashing the windows. Diane's call came as I fled his place, pregnant. Yet I hung up, tears burning. I wasn't pregnant, but I was carrying a truth heavier than any child. The fifth twist was Bryce's trap. I came home to a manila envelope on the kitchen counter. My name in Bryce's neat script. Inside were grainy photos, me and Blake in his car. The motel parking lot, timestamps pinning my lies. A note I deserved better. Caro, meet me tomorrow at the lake, or this goes to your mom, your studio, everyone. My knees buckled, the envelope slipping to the floor. Bryce hadn't screamed or fought. He'd planned his pain, a scalpel carving my world apart. I called Blake, my voice frantic, but his phone was off. Diane's voicemail followed. Don't fail me. Caroline Blake's your legacy. I stood in the dark rain, drumming the roof. The photos scattered like my life. I'd lost everything. Bryce Blake, my mother's love. What was left? The sixth twist was my own fracture. I drove to the hospital, Diane's room, a sterile cage. I'm trying, Mom, I said, my voice breaking. She grabbed my hand, her grip weak but fierce. Trying's not enough. Blake's your chance. Don't be a failure, failure. The words shattered me. I left sobbing and met Blake one last time, begging him to run with me to save us. He laughed cold and sharp. You're too broken, Caroline. This was a game and you lost. He walked away, leaving me in the rain, my mother's voice and Bryce's photos, a chorus of ruin. I stood alone, the USB in my pocket, a choice burning in my chest. Did I face Bryce or flee the wreckage I'd made? This cheating story hangs by a thread. Was I my mother's puppet or my own worst enemy? Love is a promise, Bryce said once, but I broke it and now it's breaking me. Rain soaked my hair as I stood outside Blake's apartment, his cruel laughter. This was a game and you lost ringing in my ears. The USB drive in my pocket, loaded with proof of his real estate scheme, felt like a grenade. Bryce's manila envelope with photos of my betrayal waited at home. His note demanding a meeting at the lake. My mother Diane's voice, "Don't be a failure," was a lash across my soul. Burlington's streets blurred through my tears, the weight of my cheating crushing me. I'd broken Bryce myself everything, but as I gripped the USB, a flicker of defiance sparked. I wasn't done yet. I didn't run. I drove to the lake, the meeting spot. Bryce had chosen. My hands trembling on the wheel. The USB was my leverage. But against who? Blake, Bryce, or my own guilt? Dawn broke grey and heavy as I parked near Lake Champlain, its waves lapping the shore like whispered accusations. Bryce's car was already there, his silhouette leaning against the hood, his face unreadable. I stepped out the USB in my pocket, the envelope in my hand. "You came," he said, his voice low-raw with pain. I nodded, my throat tight. "I owe you the truth, but the truth was a tangle. Diane's pressure, Blake's manipulation, my own weakness. Where did it start?" The first twist was Bryce's evidence. He held up a tablet, Emma Klein's PI report glowing on the screen, timestamps of my motel visits text to Blake, even a bank transfer $5,000 from our savings to Blake's LLC disguised as a consulting fee you stole from us. Bryce said, his eyes hard for him. My knees buckled. I hadn't known about the transfer. Blake must have used my account, forging my access. I didn't, I started, but Bryce cut me off. "Don't lie, Caro. Not now." His voice cracked and I saw the man I'd loved, the man I'd broken. I handed him the USB. My voice shaking. "Blake's using me. This proves it." Bryce's brow furrowed, but he took it, his fingers brushing mine, a ghost of the warmth we'd lost. He plugged the USB into his tablet, his face darkening as he scrolled through Blake's texts, the property listings, the photos of other women. "He's running a scam," I said, tears falling. I thought I was pleasing Mom, but he played me. Bryce's jaw tightened. "Your mom pushed you into this." I nodded, spilling everything, Diane's demands, her dying wish, her manipulation. Bryce's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You chose this, Caroline, you chose him." His words were a blade, but I didn't flinch. I deserved it. "What now?" I asked. He looked at the lake, rain rippling its surface. "I don't know." The second twist was Diane's confrontation. I went to her hospital room, the USB's truth fueling my courage. Her heart monitor beeped a metronome to her fading life, but her eyes were sharp. "You failed me," she said, her voice venomous. "No grandchild, no legacy." I stood tall, my voice steady. "You pushed me to Blake, you broke my marriage." Her face twisted, but I didn't stop. "I cheated Mom, but you made me a pawn." I showed her the USB, Blake's text to Hannah, his scheme. "This is what you wanted from me." Diane's lips trembled, but she turned away. "Get out." I left the door clicking shut, severing her hold on me. For the first time I felt free, but the cost was a hollow ache. The third twist was Blake's retaliation. That night I found my car's tires slashed, a note under the wiper. "You'll pay Caroline." My blood ran cold. Blake knew I'd taken his burner phone. I called Emma Bryce's PI, whose number I'd found in his emails. "Blake's dangerous," she said, her voice clipped. "He's tied to a real estate fraud ring. Your USB could tank him." She'd been tailing him, hired by Bryce, and had footage of Blake meeting a man, Travis the T, from the texts at a warehouse. "They're moving money." Emma said stay away from him, but Blake texted me, "Meet me or Bryce gets hurt." My hands shook. Was he bluffing or desperate enough to act? "I told Bryce, meeting him at a diner, the USB between us. Blake's threatening you." I said, my voice urgent. Bryce's face hardened. "He's a coward, Caro, but I'm not." He'd already sent the USB to the police, tipping them to Blake's fraud. "They're raiding his office tomorrow." He said, "You need to stay safe." His concern after all I'd done broke me. "I'm sorry, Bryce," I whispered, tears falling. He didn't reply, his eyes on the rain-slicked window. "I loved you," he said finally, standing. "But I don't know you anymore." He left the diner's bell jingling, my heart splintering. The fourth twist was the raid I watched from a safe distance, as police swarmed Blake's office, sirens cutting through the Burlington morning. Emma texted Blake's arrested fraud money laundering. Travis was caught too. The warehouse stuffed with forged deeds and cash. The USB had done its job, but I wasn't relieved. Blake's last text haunted me. "This isn't over." I moved to a motel, fearing his friends in the fraud ring. My yoga studio fired me, my students' whispers. "Caroline's a mess now, public." Diane refused my calls, her silence a final rejection. I was alone, the weight of my cheating wife choices a stone in my chest. The fifth twist was Bryce's decision. He filed for divorce, the papers arriving at the motel, his signature stark, no alimony, no assets. Claire, his lawyer, had locked everything down. A letter was tucked inside. "Caro, I'm letting you go, not for you, for me," I sobbed, clutching the pages, his forgiveness sharper than his anger. I wrote him back a rambling confession. Diane's pressure, Blake's lies, my shame, I don't expect forgiveness, I ended. I just needed you to know. I mailed it my hands, steady a step toward facing myself. But rumors swirled, Blake's crew was out, and someone had slashed my tires again. Fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. The sixth twist was my reckoning. Months later, Blake was convicted, sentenced to 7 years. Diane passed her heart, giving out her last words to a nurse. Tell Caroline I'm sorry I didn't cry. Her apology was too late, her love too conditional. I got a job at a bookstore, its quiet shelves a refuge. Lauren, a co-worker, became a friend. Her kindness a mirror to the woman I wanted to be. One night I saw Bryce at a cafe. His smile soft as he laughed with a woman new, unburdened by my mistakes. I didn't approach him. He deserved that peace. But a note arrived at my apartment, anonymous, "You're not forgotten." Blake's crew. A prank. I stood on my balcony. Burlington's lights twinkling, rain falling. Was I healing or just hiding? What would you have done, confessed sooner, or fought for love? This cheating story ends here, but the echoes don't. If Caroline's fall moved, you smash that like button. Share your thoughts and subscribe to Viora for more stories that sear the heart. Did I deserve a second chance, or was my ruin justice? Tell me, because I'm still searching. Love is a mirror, Lauren said once. It shows you who you are. Who am I now?